Hi, my name is Joseph Haw, and welcome to my CSCI E90 Cloud Computing Final Project. Today I'll be talking about AWS CloudSearch. For this project, I set out with kind of the initial problem statement of just having a really large set of email data that must quickly be searched through to find relevant message related to a legal investigation. So AWS CloudSearch is a Amazon Web Services service that allows you to quickly import, index, and search through a variety of file formats, including large sets of structured data. It gives us the ability to configure our index and to include advanced searching options such as using stop words and stemming. We can also write expressions to improve the relevancy of our search results that are returned to us. And we can access the service through an API to make search requests and return results. For this project, I used a sample set of data that was released as part of the government's investigation in Enron. The version of the data that I recovered had previously been converted into a MySQL database. The database included a number of tables, including message data and recipient information. It was a really large database, almost 500,000 messages, so I kind of cut out just a very small portion to load into my domain for testing purposes. And because of the way it was formatted, I needed to get it in a CSV format, so I ran an SQL query on the database to kind of pull out the relevant fields and to, again, like I said, get that small set of data. So to start with CloudSearch, you have to first set up a new CloudSearch domain. So here, you need to give the domain a name. And you also have to set the initial size of the database and any scaling options. Larger instances are recommended for large document sets, and increased replication is recommended if you think you're going to have large volumes of searches. Next, the domain will take in a sample set of data, and this is a very small set. I think I loaded 15 documents. But then AWS will analyze that data and give you a recommended configuration for your index. While you're also setting up the initial domain, you can also set up access control policies. So you can determine who can run searches against the domain and who can make API calls or can access the console or kind of configure expressions. So all of that's highly customizable. Once configured, the domain is initialized, and this takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete the process. Here's just some screenshots of running through setting up my test domain. So I gave it a name. I went with just a small instance with minimal replication just because this was kind of for testing purposes. Here I said where I wanted to pull my sample data from. You can pull this from a variety of sources like your local machine, data that's stored in an S3 bucket, data that's in a DynamoDB, or you can kind of do it all manually. I went ahead and loaded some test data, again, just 10, 15 messages into an S3 bucket, and then use this for the initial analysis. So next here, the CloudSearch has taken my sample data. It's found the relevant information. Now, my data was in CSV format, and so basically what this did was this just pulled out the relevant columns from that data, and it did its best to determine what type of field it is. So if it was textual data, date data, int data, double data, and it basically pulled that all together and gave kind of a recommended configuration. There are also a lot of options when setting this up that we'll go into a little bit more detail in just a few slides. So once we have our CloudSearch domain set up, we need to import our data. So CloudSearch data is accepted in a variety of formats, the primary being JSON or XML. And documents can be uploaded in batches of up to 5 megabytes. Data can also be imported as CSV files, like we're done here, where a column is mapped to a CloudSearch field, and each row is treated as a separate document. Using the AWS console and the command line, we can convert many file formats, such as PDFs, MS Office files, HTML, into the appropriate CloudSearch accepted JSON. And documents can be imported from a user's local machine, an S3 bucket, or from an existing AWS Dynamo. When we import documents into our CloudSearch domain, we're limited in importing documents in 5 MB chunks. Now, this is obviously something you could do on your own, kind of batching the documents, or kind of splitting up your CSV file into 5 MB sections. But the AWS CloudSearch tool has its own set of command line tools that can actually do this batching for us. So this will allow us to, in our case, import our CSV file and then break that into chunks of 5 MB. And then this tool can also be used to take for instance, Office or PDF files and convert them, batch them, and import them into our domain. Once we have documents imported, we have a number of options that we can configure for customizing our domain. We can update our index options, so we can change the field type. Changes this may require reindexing of the domain. We can change whether something is treated as a facet, so this is something that allows us to kind of drill down into our data. And we can also set whether it's a field that can be returned as part of the results. We can set up scaling and availability zone options, so we can increase the domain performance for large volumes or higher than normal search traffic. And we can ensure that the domain is reliably available by having the CloudSearch domain run in multiple availability zones. So making some of these changes may increase or decrease the cost of running a particular domain. We can also set up access control, so we can kind of more fine-tune who has access to the domain, who can make changes, who can run tests, who can build expressions, and we can configure that all within the CloudSearch tool. We can create suggesters from index fields, and so this is useful in creating autocomplete style fields where you may start typing a search term and it will suggest possible phrases. We can also use design expressions. So these are mathematical functions that allow us to rank our search results. So we might, if we had a set of data that had a lot of ints or doubles or other kind of numerical data, we could kind of create calculations based on those various fields and other variables to better organize the search results. We can also add index language analysis schemes. So this allows us to add stop words, so words that are not included as part of the index for searching, so your ands, your ors, your nots. We can do stemming, so these are things like run, runners, running. And we can do synonyms to add to the text analogies. So synonyms would be things like child or children or kid, words that all have similar meanings, and this would allow us to kind of tune our results. We can also monitor performance and domain activity, so we can see how many search requests are being made. We can see, if we need to, increase maybe the number of instances we're running, or if we need to have any replication to kind of improve performance. And we can also run test searches and expression comparisons. So, we can use some of the expressions we created earlier, and we can compare the results that were returned to those two expressions. And we can also just kind of generally see when we enter various sets of search terms, what kind of results are returned. There are a couple ways that we can interact with our CloudSearch domain. We can obviously use the AWS console. And so from here we can establish and configure new domains. We can import documents. We can run test searches, and we can analyze and develop search expressions for improving our results. We can also use the command line tools. And this is an interface for establishing new domains, configuring indices, batch importing, and just general processing of new documents into the domain. We can also use the import URL system. So this is a kind of formatted URL query. And by entering this, you would include any options that you want for your search, what fields you want to be returned, if you want any weighted text relevancy, custom search expressions, or any highlighting. Basically, you would put that in that formatted domain, and what would be returned to you is a JSON file. And then using that JSON, you can obviously manipulate that in a number of ways to present it to your end users. And CloudSearch also offers an SDK and an API for kind of programmatically making calls to the CloudSearch domain. This is for integration in any number of apps. Services. This includes services for configuration of the domain, document import, and management, and searching. And there are SDKs for several popular languages, including Java and PHP. So as kind of the core of my demo, what I did is I set up my domain, similar to what we saw earlier, and then I set up a HTML and PHP search interface for basically allowing a user to import queries and then return the results to them. So here's just a look at the PHP file that I wrote to handle kind of the front end interface. And so this is just a simple form with a number of options that'll allow a user to enter their query and then set any of the operators that they want to use. So if they want to search as a phrase, if they want to use the and to separate words, or use the or term to separate the terms. So here's just a quick view of the tool in action. So this is what the site looks like, and this is running just on a local MAMP instance that I set up for testing purposes. And so here's just the page that comes up. Here's the initial form. So here we can enter terms and we can set any operators that we want. Here's the logic that's used as kind of the back end for the PHP. So basically what this allows us here is we set the URL, the endpoint URL. Then we take in from our form the search terms. We determine what phrase was selected using the radio, or what search option was selected using the radio button. And then depending on what was selected, a number of changes are made to those search terms to add in the necessary formatted operator that AWS uses to process the query. Next, we add in just some weighted field relevance. So what this really means is that when I process my results, I'm more interested if my search term appears in the subject or the folder than if it does in the body. And so that way, say I search for cats, it's going to sort my results so that when the term cats appears in the subject line, those are going to be the higher end results. The AWS CloudSearch domain also allows us to return highlighting as part of the formatting. And so here we're just saying that anytime one of the terms that's being returned is found in the body, that will be returned as part of the JSON. And basically all that does is that adds in as part of the JSON return file any EM HTML tag, which then I can use CSS to format into the highlighting. Next, we just kind of combined all of the portions, the URL, our search terms, our custom text weighting, highlighting, and select that we want it to come back in just kind of a more readable JSON format, and then it combines that all into a variable. Next, we make a call to that URL in PHP, and we get the results, and we return those results into the JSON, and we basically split out the JSON into an array. And from there, we just loop through and pull out the relevant sections to format the results into kind of a readable format for the end user. And so here we can take a look at just a sample search I put together. And this is searching as a phrase, so we want the exact phrase legal opinion to be returned in our results. So we selected the search terms as an exact phrase operator. We can see here the URL that was passed to the CloudSearch. We can see where legal opinion is formatted in there with quotation marks. And then we can see the results, and we see that these two results do in fact have the phrase legal opinion in them, and that phrase has been highlighted. So in this second example here, we employ the use of stemming. So I just searched for the word running, and stemming is already set up on the database in the back end. There's no special that was part of the indexing that we did when we configured our domain. So there's no special options that are called as part of the URL. But you can see that the first result that we have returned here includes the word run. So this is something that's relevant. I mean, it's contextual to the idea of running, that if you say run, we're also going to see documents that have the word run in them. Next, we'll look for just a combination of using the AND operator. So this is going to search for documents that have all of these words. And we can see how that's formatted. That's formatted in our URL. It's just a plus sign operator in between the terms. And then we can see that the message is returned do in fact have Bush and Clinton in them. In the first instance there, you'll see that it's Bush in the subject, and then we see Clinton in the body. And in the second instance, we see that both terms are in fact in the body. And so these are both valid search results for documents that include both of these terms. Next, we'll look at a search that's just Bush or Clinton. So this is any of the terms that we have here, and we can see that this was formatted with an upright character in between the terms and the URL. And the results returned to us do in fact have either Clinton or Bush in them. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed learning about CloudSearch. It's a very powerful tool. And thank you.